The dust of the small town settled on everything. It was a fine reddish powder that clung to the tin roofs, the tired leaves of the mango trees. This dust was part of Leo, in the creases of his worn shorts on the skin of his bare feet. He sat on a low, crumbling wall, his small frame hunched over. In his hands, an old, chipped enamel bowl. Close up, it was empty. His stomach was empty too, a familiar ache, a knotted rope. He watched the other children play, their laughter distant, not his world. Mothers would call them for supper, voices warm with promise. Leo had no one to call him. He traced the bowl's rim with a dirty finger, slow, deliberate. He knew every crack, every rust spot. The bowl, his only possession, a gift from a grandmother. He remembered her smell, wood smoke, dried herbs, but not her face. The bowl linked to a past as hazy as evening air. He lowered his head, dry earth scent rising. Hunger made the world slow and heavy. The sun began its descent, painting the sky orange then purple. The beauty was lost on him. He saw growing shadows. His gaze drifted to the modest blue house, peeling cheerful blue paint. Flowers in old paint cans by the door, pink-yellow. Cooking smoke from the kitchen window. Frying plantains, rich stew drifting on the breeze. Sweet torture, mouth-watering, stomach clenching. He imagined the family inside, plates piled high. He tried to swallow the bitterness, not exactly jealousy. A deep, hollow longing, a full belly, a place to belong. He closed his eyes, trying to will the hunger away. Sometimes he could almost forget for a few minutes. He pretended he was a bird in the sky, free, light. The feeling returned, a gnawing reminder. He was Leo, the boy with the empty bowl, the boy nobody saw. He opened his eyes and stared at the blue house. A light flickered in a window. He didn't know why he kept looking. A habit, a place to rest tired eyes, or perhaps a stubborn sliver of hope, thin as a spider's thread. The front door of the blue house creaked open. A girl stepped out onto the porch. Her name was Amara. She had skin the color of rich, dark earth after a rain, and her eyes were large and kind. She saw Leo sitting on the wall, a small, lonely figure in the fading light. He quickly looked down at his empty bowl, as if ashamed to have been caught staring. Amara did not laugh or point. She simply watched him for a moment, her expression soft with a knowing that was older than her years. She had seen him there many times before, a silent statue of want. Her mother had always told her that kindness costs nothing, but its value is more than gold. Amara disappeared back inside the house. Leo heard the faint murmur of voices, a gentle back and forth. He thought she had gone for good, that he had imagined the softness in her eyes. He prepared to stand up, to find a hidden corner where he could curl up and wait for sleep to take him. But then, the door opened again. Amara came back out, and this time, she was not empty-handed. She carefully carried a plate, steam rising from it in a fragrant cloud. She walked across the dusty lane, her steps light and sure. She did not hesitate as she approached him. She stopped right in front of him, and the smell of the food was so close, so real, that it made him dizzy.
You look hungry?
Her voice was as gentle as her eyes. It was not a question, but a simple statement of fact. She held the plate out to him. 2 golden fried plantains, a scoop of white rice, a generous ladle of fish stew, the red sauce glistening with oil. It was more food than Leo had seen in days. He stared at the plate, then at her face, then back at the plate. He could not believe it. People usually shooed him away or looked right through him. They did not bring him their own supper. His hands trembled as he reached out, his empty bowl feeling heavy and useless. She pushed the plate a little closer. Leo finally took it, his fingers brushing against hers. Her hand was warm. He did not wait. He used his fingers to scoop up the rice and stew, eating quickly, desperately. He did not care that sauce dripped onto his chin. The food was warm and delicious, chasing away the cold emptiness inside him. Amara did not leave. She sat down on the wall next to him, her presence a quiet comfort. She did not watch him eat in a way that made him feel like an animal. She simply looked up at the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. This became their ritual. Almost every evening, Amara would bring Leo a plate of food. She would sit with him while he ate, sometimes talking, sometimes just sharing the silence. She told him about her school, about the book she was reading, and about her dream of becoming a teacher. Leo, in turn, started to talk too. He spoke in short, hesitant sentences at first. He told her about the stray dog that sometimes followed him and about the best trees to climb to see the whole town. He learned to eat more slowly, to savor the food and the company. The ache in his stomach was replaced by a different feeling, a warmth that had nothing to do with food. It was the warmth of being seen. One evening, as the moon hung full and bright in the sky, Leo finished the last piece of yam from his plate. He felt a familiar pang of shame wash over him. He was always taking, and she was always giving. He looked at his worn shorts and her clean, simple dress. He looked at his bare, dusty feet and her sturdy sandals. The difference between them felt like a wide, deep river. He wanted to give her something in return, but he had nothing. Nothing but the empty bowl he carried, and even that was not his to give. The feeling of helplessness was a heavy weight on his small shoulders. He wanted to be more than the boy she fed out of pity. "One day," he said, his voice barely a whisper. He looked at her, his eyes serious.
"One day I will be rich."
The words sounded strange and hollow in the quiet night. Amara tilted her head, her braids shifting over her shoulder. She did not laugh at his childish declaration. She just listened, her gaze steady and encouraging. "I will leave this town. I will go to the big city. I will work hard. I will make a lot of money. I will wear clean clothes and shiny shoes, and I will never be hungry again." He spoke of it as if it were a story he had read, a future that was already written. Then he looked directly into her kind, dark eyes. The next words came out in a rush, filled with all the gratitude and hope and shame he felt. "And when I come back," he said, his voice trembling slightly,
"I will marry you, I promise."
The words hung in the air between them, heavy and real. It was a child's promise, born from a desperate need to repay a kindness he could not otherwise match. It was a promise to turn the tables, to be the giver instead of the taker. Amara looked at him, a small, sad smile on her lips. She understood the heart behind his words, the deep well of pride and longing from which they came. She did not say yes or no. She just reached out and gently brushed a speck of dust from his cheek. The promise changed something between them. It was a secret they now shared, a tiny seed planted in the dusty ground of their friendship. For Leo, the promise became his guiding star. It was no longer just a vague dream of being rich. It was a mission with a purpose. He started looking for small jobs around the town. He offered to carry heavy bags for shoppers at the market. He swept the front of shop stalls for a few coins. He was small, but he was determined. Most people ignored him, but a few would give him a small task and an even smaller payment. He saved every single coin in a rusty tin can. It was kept hidden under a loose floorboard in the abandoned shed where he slept. Amara watched him. She saw the new fire in his eyes. She saw the way he walked with a little more purpose. She worried about him. She saw how hard he pushed his small body. Sometimes she would bring him an extra piece of fruit in the middle of the day, telling him he needed his strength. He would accept it, but his eyes would hold a flicker of that same shame, that same fierce pride. Their evenings on the wall continued. Their conversations were filled with plans. Leo would talk about the city, a place he had only heard about in stories. He imagined tall buildings that touched the clouds, and roads filled with so many cars they looked like a river of steel.
"I will have a big house."
It will have a real kitchen, with a stove that lights up with a click, and there will always be food in it. So much food. Amara would listen, her chin resting on her knees. She did not talk about the house or the money.
"Will you have a garden?"
Leo paused, surprised by the question. "Yes," she'd say, "with flowers, and maybe a small bench to sit on in the evening." He would nod slowly, adding her dream to his own. "Yes," he would agree. a garden with a bench. These conversations built a shared world of dreams, a fragile castle in the air constructed from his ambition and her quiet hopes. The promise was the foundation of it all. It was the reason for the coins in the tin can and the talk of gardens under the stars. For Leo, marrying Amara was the ultimate symbol of his success. It meant he would finally be worthy. For Amara, the promise was a more complicated thing. It was the heartfelt vow of a boy she cared for deeply, and she cherished the sentiment. But she also saw the heavy burden it placed on him, a weight a child should not have to carry. She saw his dream of leaving, and a quiet sadness began to grow in her heart. The day Leo decided to leave came sooner than Amara expected. He was 13 now, still thin, but with a wiry strength forged by years of small, hard jobs. He had saved enough money for a one-way ticket on the bus that rumbled through their town once a day on its way to the capital city. He came to the Blue House in the middle of the afternoon, not at his usual evening time. He held his rusty tin can in one hand and a small, cloth-wrapped bundle in the other. His expression was a mixture of fear and fierce resolve. He stood at the edge of the porch, his bare feet leaving faint prints in the dust, prints that the wind would soon erase. Amara came out to meet him. She knew the moment she saw him that this was it. Her heart felt like a stone in her chest. "The bus leaves in an hour." He held out the tin can to her. "This is for your mother, for all the food." Amara shook her head, pushing the can gently back toward him.
You will need it.
"The city is expensive." Her own voice was thick with emotion she tried to hide. She did not want to make this harder for him. She knew he had to go. This small town held no future for a boy like him, a boy with a sky full of dreams. He looked down, unable to meet her gaze. The silence stretched between them, filled with all the things they could not say. He was leaving behind the only kindness he had ever known. She was letting go of the boy she had nurtured, sending him into a world that was big and uncaring. His eyes were shining with unshed tears.
I won't.
And I will come back. I will come back for you, Rich, just like I said.
The promise, spoken for the last time, felt more real and more painful than ever before. He turned and walked away without looking back. Amara stood on the porch and watched him go. She watched until his small figure was just a speck on the long, dusty road leading out of town. She watched until he disappeared completely. She stood there for a long time after he was gone, staring at the empty road. The sun was hot on her skin, but she felt cold inside. She looked down at the ground where he had stood. His footprints were still there, faint impressions in the red dust. But even as she watched, a small gust of wind blew across the lane, and the prints began to soften, to fade, to slowly disappear. The promise was all that was left. The days settled into a comfortable rhythm, a gentle pattern woven around the setting sun. For Leo, the world no longer felt so sharp and hostile. The gnawing emptiness in his stomach had been replaced by a quiet anticipation that began in the late afternoon. He would find himself watching the sun, tracking its slow journey across the sky, not with the dread of approaching hunger, but with the hope of Amara's arrival. Their evening meeting became the anchor of his day. The simple act of her bringing a plate of food was more than just nourishment for his body. It was a lifeline for his spirit. Amara, too, found her days shaped by this new routine. When her mother portioned out the evening meal, Amara would carefully set aside a share for Leo. Her mother would often add an extra piece of fish, a larger scoop of rice, and give a quiet, approving smile. Amara would carry the plate across the dusty lane. She found a deep satisfaction in this small act. Seeing Leo's face light up, seeing the gratitude in his eyes gave her quiet joy. Their time together on the low, crumbling wall became a sacred space. The world around them, with its noise and its judgments, seemed to fade away. Here, they were just Leo and Amara. He learned the sound of her gentle laugh, which was like the tinkling of small bells. She learned the way his eyes would crinkle at the corners when he was truly happy, a rare but precious sight. They talked about small things. She described the pictures in her geography book, faraway places with snow-vast oceans. He told her about the secret language of the birds, how a certain chirp meant danger, another was a call for a mate. This daily ritual built a bridge between their two very different worlds: shared meals, quiet conversations, mutual respect. Leo started to hold his head a little higher as he walked through the town during the day. The shame of his poverty had not disappeared, but it was now balanced by the dignity of having a friend. He was no longer just the boy with the empty bowl. He was Leo, the boy who shared his evenings with Amara. And that small change made all the difference. The dust of the town still clung to him, but it felt less like a mark of neglect and more like a simple fact of life, like the color of the earth itself. For Leo, the city was not a real place. It was a myth. It was a legend. It was a promised land. He had never been there. He had never even seen a picture of it. His idea of the city was a patchwork quilt of overheard conversations, fragments of stories from traveling merchants, his own vivid imagination. In his mind, the buildings were so tall they scraped the belly of the clouds. The streets were not made of dust and dirt. They were smooth, black stone, filled with a never-ending river of cars. Their horns a constant, exciting music. It was a place where anything was possible, a stark contrast to his small, predictable town. He listened intently whenever anyone spoke of the capital. He learned it held great wealth and great poverty, side by side. He heard tales of men who had arrived with nothing and built vast business empires. These were the stories he clung to, ignoring the more common tales of struggle, disappointment, crime. In his mind, he was destined to be one of the success stories. His will was strong enough, his purpose clear enough. The city was a challenge, a beast to be tamed. He was ready for the fight. The promise he had made to Amara was his shield and his sword. He described his imagined city to Amara during their evenings on the wall. "There are lights that stay on all night, Amara," he would say, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's never completely dark there. And there are shops that sell everything you could ever dream of. I will walk into one of those shops one day and buy you the most beautiful dress you have ever seen." He spoke with such certainty that it was almost convincing. He was not just dreaming, he was rehearsing his future. He was building the city in his mind long before he would set foot in it. Amara would listen with a patient heart. Her vision of the city was less glamorous. She had read it was crowded, noisy, often dirty. For every success story, she knew there were 1,000 stories of hardship. She tried gently to inject a dose of reality into his fantasies.
You will have to be careful, Leo.
"And you will need a place to stay. It will be hard at first." Her words were like small stones thrown into a great river. They barely caused a ripple in the powerful current of his optimism. He was deaf to doubt, blinded by the bright lights of his imagined future. The day finally came. Leo was 13 years old. He had been saving for more than a year. The rusty tin can, once light and empty, was now heavy with coins. He had counted them one last time that morning in the dusty shed. Enough for the one-way bus ticket to the capital, with a little left over. The reality of his departure settled over him, a heavy cloak of both terror and exhilaration. He had been working toward this day for so long that it felt both inevitable and impossible. Leaving meant abandoning the only home he had ever known, and the only person who had ever shown him true kindness. He spent the day in a daze, going through the motions of his small jobs, but his mind was elsewhere. He was saying goodbye to the town in his own silent way. He looked at the familiar tin roofs, the winding lanes, the ancient mango tree in the market square. These were the sights that had formed the backdrop of his entire life. He felt a surprising pang of nostalgia for this place he was so desperate to escape. It was a poor, dusty town, but it was his. The thought that he might never see it again was a sudden, sharp pain in his chest. But the promise pushed him forward, silencing his fear and his sadness. That evening, he walked toward the blue house for what he knew would be the last time in a long while. The sun was setting, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange, red, and purple. It was the most beautiful sunset he had ever seen, as if the sky itself were putting on a farewell performance just for him. He and Amara had watched hundreds of sunsets from their spot on the wall, but this one felt different. It was imbued with the weight of goodbye. Every color seemed more vibrant, every shadow deeper. The air was still and warm, carrying the familiar scent of wood smoke and evening blossoms. When Amara came out, she knew. She did not need him to say a word. She could see it in the way he stood in the tense set of his jaw in the small, cloth-wrapped bundle he held in his hand. Her heart, which had been bracing for this moment for months, still felt as if it had dropped into her stomach. She carried his plate of food as usual, her movements slow and deliberate. She did not want to rush this final meeting. She wanted to stretch these last few moments, to hold on to this shared ritual for as long as she possibly could. The last sunset was bleeding its color from the sky, and the time for their departure was drawing near. Amara placed the plate of food on the wall between them. Tonight, she had made sure it was his favorite, jollof rice, with a large piece of fried fish. It was her mother's way of saying goodbye and good luck. Leo looked at the food, his throat suddenly tight. He was not sure he could eat, the emotions churning inside him: fear, hope, sadness, determination. He picked up a piece of the fish with his fingers. The familiar gesture felt strange and foreign tonight. This simple act of eating, once the foundation of their friendship, was now freighted with the sorrow of parting. They ate in silence for a long time. There was nothing left to say about his plans. The city of dreams had been described, the promise had been made and affirmed. All that remained was the quiet, painful reality of the goodbye itself. The silence was not empty, it was filled with all the unspoken words, and with the shared memories of the past year. It was filled with the memory of the first plate of food, the sting of the other boys' taunts, the pride of the first coin, the hundreds of conversations that had unfolded right here on this crumbling wall. The silence was a living thing, a testament to the bond they had forged.
You will write to me?
She had to know that he would not just disappear.
I don't know how to write.
It was a stark reminder of all the things he lacked, of the world of education that she inhabited, and he did not.
I will learn. I will learn to write, and my first letter will be to you. I promise.
It was another promise, a smaller one nested inside the great one. He finished the food, eating mechanically, his mind elsewhere. He was trying to memorize everything about this moment. He wanted to remember the taste of the rice, the exact shade of the twilight sky, the feel of the rough stone wall beneath his hands. Most of all, he wanted to memorize Amara's face, her kind eyes, and the gentle curve of her smile. This memory would have to sustain him through the hard times to come. It would be his talisman in the strange and frightening city. This final meal was not just a last act of kindness from her, it was the fuel he would carry inside him on his long journey. When the plate was empty, Leo pushed it aside. The time had come. He turned to face Amara fully, the last light of dusk catching the earnestness in his young face. He needed to say it one more time. He needed her to hear it. He needed to hear himself say it.
I am going now, but I will be back.
This is not goodbye forever. Amara simply nodded, her eyes glistening with tears she refused to let fall. She knew that arguing would only make it harder for him, or crying would only make it harder for him.
I am going to get rich. I will work hard. I will be successful. I won't be the boy with the empty bowl anymore.
He looked down at his own hands, then back at her. And I will keep my promise, the one I made to you, right here. He looked her directly in the eye, his gaze intense and unwavering.
I will come back for you, and I will marry you.
The promise had never felt more real. It was the contract that defined his future. Amara finally reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm and soft around his, which were calloused from his recent work.
Be safe, Leo.
Not the money, not the dress, not the marriage promise. She just wanted him to be safe and be a good person. Don't let the city make you hard. Leo stood up from the wall. It was time to go. The bus headlights were visible on the main road, cutting through the darkness. He let go of Amara's hand. The loss of her warmth was an immediate, physical ache. He picked up his small bundle. Inside, his only spare shirt. Inside, the rusty tin can full of his life's savings. Two small figures silhouetted against the night sky, caught in a painful transition.
Goodbye, Amara.
Goodbye, Leo.
He turned and, without looking back, began to walk down the lane, away from the blue house, away from her. He walked with a determined stride, his bare feet whispered in the dust. He did not dare to look back. His resolve might crumble. Amara stood by the wall and watched. She watched his small, straight back until it was swallowed by darkness. She listened until his footsteps faded into nothing. She was alone again in the quiet evening. She heard the distant rumble of the bus, then the hiss of its brakes. The bus pulled away, its sound growing fainter until silence. He was gone. She wrapped her arms around herself, a sudden chill despite the warm night. She felt a profound sense of loss, as if part of her had been torn away. After the sound of the bus had completely disappeared, Amara remained standing by the wall. The moon was high in the sky now, casting a cool white light over the sleeping town. She looked at the spot on the wall where Leo always sat. It was just an empty space now. She ran her hand over the surface, her fingers tracing the cracks and bumps. Now, it was just a wall again. A wave of loneliness, deeper than any she had felt before, washed over her. The daily ritual that had given her days such meaning was over. Tomorrow, her mother would cook supper. There would be no extra plate to set aside. The sun would set. There would be no one to share it with. She picked up the empty plate he had left behind. She thought of the first day she had brought him food, how he ate with desperate hunger. She thought of his pride when he brought her the 2 bruised mangoes. She thought of his face, illuminated by excitement when he showed her his first earned coin, the promise. It was all that was left of him now, an invisible thing connecting them across miles already growing between them. Slowly, she walked back across the dusty lane to her blue house. She washed the plate. The familiar chore felt strange and sad. She placed it on the drying rack and looked out the small window toward the wall. The empty space seemed to be calling out, a silent testament to a chapter that had ended. A new chapter was beginning for both of them, separation and uncertainty. The first few weeks in the city were a blur of noise, confusion, and overwhelming loneliness for Leo. He found a tiny corner to sleep in a crowded room with a dozen other men, all of them chasing a similar dream of fortune. The rent was paid weekly, and it consumed a terrifying portion of his saved coins. Every waking moment was spent on the streets looking for work. He was no longer the known hard-working boy from the market. Here, he was just another anonymous face in a sea of desperate people. The promise he had made to Amara felt both like a distant, impossible dream, and the only thing keeping him from giving up entirely. He thought of her constantly, especially in the cold, lonely hours before dawn. He remembered his second promise to her, that he would learn to write and send her a letter. Dear Amara, it would begin. The city is just as big as I imagined, but it is also very lonely. I miss our wall. I miss you. I am working hard. I have not forgotten my promise. The city was a relentless assault on the senses. In his small town, the loudest sounds had been the crowing of a rooster or the laughter of children in the market. Here, the noise never stopped. Truck engines, car horns, shouting vendors, the distant, ceaseless hum of a million lives. The air did not smell of dust and wood smoke. It smelled of exhaust fumes, rotting garbage, and fried foods on every corner. Leo felt small and insignificant, a single grain of sand on a vast, churning beach. The city did not care if he succeeded or failed. It would grind on regardless. He learned quickly that the city had its own brutal rules. Kindness was a rare commodity. People's eyes were hard, their movements hurried. Everyone was in competition, a job for the day, a space on the crowded pavement, a customer's attention. He was pushed, ignored, cheated out of a day's pay. The open, trusting nature that served him back home was a liability. He had to be tougher, more suspicious, build a wall around himself. He thought of Amara's plea to be a good person and wondered if the city would even allow it. His dream of tall buildings touching the clouds had come true, but up close they were oppressive. They blocked out the sun, casting long, cold shadows over the streets where he searched for work. Fortresses of wealth, gleaming windows looking down on poverty below. He would stare up at them. The gap felt like an impossible chasm. He was a boy on the pavement, the riches locked away in towers of glass and steel. The city was not a land of opportunity. It was a fortress to breach. Every day was a battle. He woke with gnawing anxiety about earning enough for tomorrow. Physical hunger was familiar, a new hunger for a foothold, for a sign of progress. Some days he earned more than enough. Other days, he earned nothing. The uncertainty was a constant mental strain. He missed the predictability of home, the certainty that Amara would be there at sunset. Here, there was no anchor. The noise, the steel, the lonely, relentless struggle. He kept going anyway. In his small town, a single coin had been a triumph, a shining symbol of progress. In the city, a coin felt almost worthless. A piece of bread cost 2 coins. A bottle of water cost 3. His entire life savings, which had seemed like a fortune in his rusty tin can, dwindled with alarming speed. The weight of each coin he spent was heavy with fear. He was not saving anymore. He was just surviving. The grand project of accumulating wealth had been replaced by the desperate daily calculus of income versus expenses. The dream of becoming rich felt like a cruel joke when he was counting coins to see if he could afford a meal. He found a job that offered a little more stability. It was with a crew of men who unloaded heavy sacks of rice and flour from trucks at a large warehouse. The work was backbreaking, lifting and carrying from dawn until dusk. His muscles screamed in protest, and his hands, once calloused from mending nets, became raw and blistered. But the pay was regular. At the end of each week, the foreman would line them up and press a small handful of coins into each man's palm. It was more than he had ever earned before, but it still felt like a pittance in the face of the city's voracious appetite for money. After paying for his shared sleeping space and buying just enough food to keep his strength up, there was very little left over. He started a new savings stash, not in a rusty tin can, but in a small cloth pouch he kept tied around his waist, hidden under his shirt. The first few coins he managed to add to it felt like a monumental victory. He was no longer just surviving. He was starting to save again, however slowly. Each coin added to the pouch was a tiny act of defiance against the city, a small reaffirmation of his promise to Amara. He would touch the pouch throughout the day, the small, hard lumps a secret source of comfort and motivation. The men he worked with were hard, weary individuals. They gambled, they drank, they fought, they laughed at his careful saving. "What are you saving for, boy?" one of them asked him once, his voice mocking. "You think you're going to get rich carrying sacks?" Leo did not answer, so he kept his head down, did his work, and protected his small, growing secret. The physical hunger Leo had known in his childhood was a simple, straightforward pain. It was an emptiness in the belly that could be filled with food. The city introduced him to a new kind of hunger, one that was more complex and harder to satisfy. He saw it everywhere. Newspapers men read, the signs on the shops, the forms that had to be filled out for certain jobs. His inability to read and write was a constant barrier, a source of deep and persistent shame. It limited his opportunities, keeping him confined to the world of manual labor. This hunger for literacy became an obsession, second only to his need to save money. He started collecting discarded newspapers, not to read, but to look at the shapes of the letters. He would try to match a headline to a street sign, a slow and frustrating game of visual association. He would listen as someone read aloud, trying to match sounds to the marks on the page. He thought of Amara and her schoolbooks. She moved through the world of words with ease. He was locked outside it. The promise to write her a letter became a heavier weight, a promise he was failing to keep. One day he saw a boy teach an old man to write a name, on a bench in a small, forgotten park. The boy guiding the old man's hand, forming letters. Leo watched from a distance, heart pounding. It was a revelation. It showed learning was possible for anyone. He did not need a formal classroom. He just needed a teacher. The hunger had a direction. He just had to find the courage to ask for help. Section 6. Amara's Quiet Vigil. Back in the small town, life continued its slow, predictable rhythm. But for Amara, the world felt fundamentally altered. A year had passed since Leo had left. The empty picture frame on a plain wall in a modest home. The seasons changed. The rains came, turning the red dust to thick mud, and then the sun returned, baking the earth hard again. The mango tree in the market square blossomed and bore fruit. Children who had been small were now a little taller. Everything moved forward, yet a part of Amara's heart remained frozen in time, waiting. She kept a quiet vigil, scanning the horizon for a sign, a word. She had expected a letter. She knew he could not write. She had held onto his fierce promise to learn. The old postman made his rounds, his bag full of news from the outside world. Her heart would give a hopeful leap each time she saw him. She watched from her window as he stopped at houses down the lane, but he never stopped at the blue house. Months passed with no word. Hope curdled into a dull, persistent ache. The silence from the city was a vast, empty space her imagination rushed to fill. Was he safe? Was he healthy? Had the city swallowed him whole? Had he forgotten her? Had the promise from that moonlit night dissolved in the noisy reality of his new life? She sat on the wall in the evenings, a book on her lap, eyes on the road out of town. Their memory was a warm glow, but the silence was a growing shadow. Her faith in him was being tested. She continued with her life, studying, dreaming of becoming a teacher. She helped her mother around the house. Amara could not write to Leo because she had no address. The city was a vast, anonymous place, and he was just one boy lost within it. But that did not stop her from composing letters to him in her mind. Just as he created his unwritten letters to her in his crowded bunk, she created her own replies in the quiet of her room. They were a one-sided conversation, a way to keep the connection alive in her own heart, even as the silence from his end grew louder and more troubling. "Dear Leo," she would think, as she looked out her window at the moonlit wall. "I hope you are well. I hope you have found a safe place to sleep and enough to eat. The town is the same as always. Mama asks about you sometimes. I tell her you must be very busy. Please be careful. The city is not like our town." Sometimes her unsent replies were more practical. She would tell him about the things she was learning in school, especially in geography. "Today we learned about maps," she would compose in her head. "A map can show you where you are and how to get to other places. I wish I had a map that could show me where you are." This longing for his location, for a single, tangible point of contact, was a constant ache. The lack of an address was a symbol of how completely he had vanished, how thoroughly he had been absorbed into the great, unknown entity of the city. These silent conversations were a comfort, but they were also a source of pain. They highlighted the one-way nature of their connection now. She was holding up her end of the bond, but she was holding it up alone. Each unsent reply was another knot in the long, silent thread of her waiting, a testament to her loyalty, and a testament to her growing loneliness. She was a faithful correspondent to a ghost. 2 years passed. The fine, reddish dust of the town continued its cycle, settling and being swept away by the wind and the rains. Amara was older now, her girlish frame beginning to lengthen into the grace of a young woman. Amara walking through the town market. She is carrying a basket and her expression is poised and serene, but there's a hint of distance in her eyes. Her dreams were solidifying too. She was at the top of her class. Her teachers spoke with certainty about her future as an educator. She had a quiet confidence, a maturity that had been forged in her patient, lonely vigil. The wait for Leo had changed her, tempering her heart with a strength and resilience she hadn't known she possessed. The town began to see her differently. She was no longer just the kind girl from the blue house. She was Amara, the bright student, the one who would likely go to the teacher's college in the next district. Young men in the town started to notice her. Shy glances and awkward greetings. Her mother would gently mention a good family, a respectable son. Amara would always smile politely and change the subject. In her heart, there was a space that was still occupied. It was held by the memory of a boy and the weight of a promise, however faded and distant it now seemed. She still sat on the wall some evenings, though not as often as before. It was less a vigil now, and more a quiet habit, a way of connecting with her own past. She would watch the sunset and remember the boy with the fierce eyes and the impossible dream. Had he changed? Had the city hardened him as she had feared? Had he forgotten the feel of this rough stone beneath his hands? The taste of her mother's jollof rice? The questions were softer now, less urgent. She was beginning to accept that his promise might have been just a child's vow, a beautiful but unrealistic dream. But acceptance was not the same as letting go. Deep within her, a tiny ember of hope still glowed. She was learning to live her life, to build her own future. But she kept a small window in her heart open, just in case a letter or a person should ever arrive. In the city, Leo had also changed. 2 years of relentless manual labor had transformed his wiry frame. He was taller, muscles in his back, hard and defined, muscles in his arms, hard and defined. The boy was fading. A young man was emerging. He had survived. He had learned the city's harsh rhythms and adapted. The cloth pouch tied around his waist was heavier now. It represented an amount of money that would have seemed an impossible fortune to the boy who had left his town with a can full of coins. He had long since left the backbreaking work at the warehouse. Read, write, do basic arithmetic, eventually becoming a clerk for a merchant who imported goods. Observing, listening, saving every coin he could. He was still living frugally, but he had moved out of the crowded dormitory into a small, clean room of his own. It was a tiny space, but it was private. It was a palace to him. Small table where he could read, write, locked door. But he was restless. He knew that working for another man would never make him rich. It would give him a living, but it would not give him the future he had promised Amara. He was at a crossroads. He could continue on this safe, slow path, or he could take a risk. The idea had been growing in his mind for months. Many small shops in the outer neighborhoods had a difficult time getting certain goods from the port. The big merchants focused on the larger stores in the city center. There was a gap in the market, an opportunity for someone small and agile, buying from the port, distributing to these forgotten shops. It was a risk. It would mean using all of his savings, his entire 5-year hoard, to buy his first shipment of goods. If it failed, he would lose everything and be back where he started. One night, he sat in his room with Amara's photograph propped up on the table in front of him. He looked at her kind, steady eyes. He had come to the city to become a man worthy of her. Playing it safe was not the path to that goal. The boy who had left home was a risk-taker, driven by a desperate hope. He had to be that person again. He made his decision. He would take the leap. He would invest everything he had in himself. Section 17. A new venture, a bigger risk. Leo took all the money he had saved over 5 years of relentless work and frugal living and went to the port. It was a terrifying and exhilarating moment. He used his knowledge from working as a clerk to negotiate a good price on a shipment of tinned goods, soap. He then rented a small, hand-pushed cart. Loading his entire net worth onto that rickety cart, he felt a fear more intense than anything he had experienced on his first day in the city. This was not just a collection of coins anymore. It was his future and his promise. His entire identity, all balanced precariously on 2 wheels. The first few weeks were grueling. He would wake before dawn, push his heavy cart for miles to the outlying districts, go from shop to shop, trying to convince skeptical owners to buy from him. Many said no. They had their established suppliers. They didn't trust this new, unknown young man. Every rejection was a blow, chipping away at his confidence and his small margin of profit. He was running on pure adrenaline and the sheer force of his will. Slowly, however, he began to make inroads. He was reliable. He was honest. His prices were fair. A few shopkeepers gave him a chance. They placed small orders. He delivered exactly what he had promised. On time, they ordered again, this time in larger quantities. Word began to spread. There is a young man, Leo. He is a hard worker. You can trust him. His reputation, the one thing he could build for free, became his most valuable asset. He started to sell out his entire cart by the end of each day. He would return to his small room, exhausted but triumphant, with a pocket full of money to reinvest. He was no longer just saving, he was trading. He was making money work for him. Within 6 months, he had doubled his initial investment. He bought a better cart. He hired a boy to help him load and unload. He was no longer just a laborer, he was a businessman. He was becoming one of the men he used to read about in the newspapers. Section 19, 7 years. It had been 7 years since Leo had left his hometown on a dusty road with nothing but a few coins and a promise. He was now 20 years old and a success by any measure. His small distribution venture had grown into a proper trading business. He had a small warehouse, 2 trucks, a dozen employees. He wore clean clothes and shiny shoes. He lived in a comfortable apartment, not just a room. He had done it. He had become rich. And he had never, not for one single day, forgotten the reason why. One evening, he was sitting in his apartment, looking over his accounts. The numbers on the page confirmed his success. He had more money than he had ever dreamed of. But he felt a profound emptiness. The thrill of the deal, the satisfaction of turning a profit, had begun to fade. He pulled Amara's photograph from his wallet. The paper was soft and worn from years of being carried close to his heart. He looked at her face, the face that had been his guiding star through all the years of struggle. He felt a sudden, sharp fear that he might have waited too long, that she might have moved on. The decision crystallized in that moment, with a clarity that swept away all his weariness and doubt. It was time. It was time to go home. The first part of the promise was fulfilled. Now, he had to see about the second and most important part. He would return, not in secret, but in triumph. He would go back to the town that had scorned him and claim the one person who had ever shown him kindness. He would keep his promise. The next morning, he began to make his arrangements. He was finally going home. Section 20. The journey home was the reverse of the one he had taken 7 years prior, but it felt 100 times longer. He did not travel by the slow, rattling bus that stopped in every village. He hired a private car and a driver. He sat in the clean, comfortable back seat, watching the chaotic city sprawl, give way to smaller towns, and then the familiar countryside of his youth. He was wearing a well-tailored suit, a stark contrast to the worn shorts and bare feet of his departure. In a locked briefcase on the seat beside him were gifts and documents that represented his wealth. But his heart was filled with the same fear and hope as the boy he had once been. As they drew closer to his town, his anxiety grew. He was returning as a different person, to a place that he now only knows through memory and letters. Wealth had given him confidence, but it could not protect him from the fear of emotional rejection. The money, the suit, the car, they all felt like a costume. Underneath, he was still the boy from the wall, desperately seeking the approval of the girl from the blue house. He had the driver stop the car at the edge of town, near the same spot where the bus had picked him up. He got out, the fine dust of the road settling on his shiny leather shoes. He told the driver to wait for him. He wanted to walk the last part of the way alone. He needed to shed the armor of his success and approach her not as a wealthy merchant, but simply as Leo. He took off his suit jacket, loosened his tie, and began to walk down the familiar lane. His heart pounded with every step. He saw the familiar tin roofs, the ancient mango tree. The town looked smaller, quieter than he remembered. Then he saw it, the blue house. It was still the same cheerful, if peeling, shade of blue. There were still flowers growing in the old paint cans by the door. It was real. It was all real. He stopped, his breath catching in his throat. He had crossed the world. He had fought battles. He had built a small fortune, and it had all led him back to this single spot. Section 1. The arrival of the car was an event. The morning roosters. The chatter of the market. The low, powerful hum of a modern engine. It broke the sleepy afternoon quiet. Heads turning from every doorway and stall. Amara was at home, helping her mother shell peas on the front porch. She heard the engine and, like everyone else, her hands stilled. Her gaze drifted towards the main road. A prickle of unease ran up her spine. The whispers about Leo's success had been growing louder in recent months. and every unusual event felt like a potential prelude to his return. But the sound of that specific, expensive engine felt different. It sounded like the city. The back door of the car opened. A man stepped out. From this distance, he was just a silhouette against the bright afternoon sun. Amara's heart began to beat a frantic, painful rhythm against her ribs. She could not see his face, but she knew. She knew with a certainty that defied logic, a deep, primal recognition that bypassed her eyes and went straight to her soul. Section 2. A Ghost in a Fine Suit. Leo stood by the car, letting the familiar air fill his lungs. It was the same dry, dusty air, scented with wood smoke, and the faint, sweet smell of ripe mangoes from a nearby tree. The scent was a key, unlocking a flood of memories he had kept carefully compartmentalized for 7 years. He felt the phantom weight of an empty bowl in his hands, the gnawing ache of hunger in his belly. For a moment, the fine suit he wore felt like a costume. The man he had become a thin veneer over the boy who had walked this very road barefoot. He saw the faces peering from doorways, the children who had stopped their games to stare. He was a spectacle, an object of curiosity. This was what he had wanted, wasn't it? To return in triumph, to show them all that the beggar boy had become a king. But now standing here, the triumph felt hollow. He was no longer one of them. He was an outsider, a man who had arrived in a fancy car, and their gazes were a mixture of awe and suspicion. He began to walk, his expensive leather shoes sinking into the soft red dust, each step a conscious effort to bridge the gap between two worlds. Section 3. The Unfamiliar Familiar. As Leo drew closer, the details of the town came into sharp, painful focus. Everything was both exactly as he remembered and completely different. The buildings seemed smaller, the colors less vibrant, the distances shorter. He saw her then. She was standing on the porch, a tall, graceful figure who had emerged from the girl in his photograph. The shy smile in the picture was gone, replaced by a still, watchful expression he could not read. She was not running to greet him. She was not smiling. She was simply standing there, her hands clasped in front of her, a statue of quiet contemplation. Her stillness was more unnerving than any shout or cry could have been. He stopped at the edge of the property, the imaginary line where the dusty public lane met the private space of her home. Now it was his turn to cross it, but the distance felt immense, a chasm of time and change. He was just a boy again, standing before the girl who had been kind to him, terrified that he had made a terrible mistake. Section 4. The Weight of 7 Years. Amara watched him walk towards her, and it was like watching a story come to life. The boy she remembered was wiry and small, with eyes that held a desperate, hunted look. This man was broad-shouldered and confident, his gaze direct and appraising. She felt a pang of loss for the boy he had been, a boy who no longer existed. 7 years. It was a lifetime. She had gone from a girl to a woman. She had finished her schooling, enrolled in teacher's college, and built a future for herself on the foundations of her own intellect and hard work. As he stopped before her house, she saw a flicker of something familiar in his eyes. Behind the confident exterior, she saw a trace of the boy. It was a flash of vulnerability, of uncertainty, a silent question that asked, "Do you still see me?"
Leo took a deep breath, the air tasting of dust and memory. He had to say something. "Amara," he said.
He took a hesitant step forward, then another, until he stood at the bottom of her porch steps.
"You have not changed."
You have, Leo.
Section 8. An Unspoken Audience. Inside the house, the air was thick with the awareness of the audience outside. Though the door was closed, Leo and Amara could both feel the weight of the town's expectations pressing in on them. They were no longer just two people navigating a complex personal history. They were the central actors in a public drama. Amara's mother, perhaps sensing the need for a moment of normalcy, bustled around, offering Leo a seat, going to fetch a glass of cool water. Her simple domestic actions were an attempt to ground the moment, to turn it from a spectacle back into a visit. He had not considered how this public display would impact her, how it would rob their reunion of its privacy and force her into a role she had not chosen. He felt a pang of guilt. His triumphant return was, in its own way, as selfish as his initial departure.
Section 9, The Walk to the Wall. Amara, let's walk. Amara, we should not talk here.
Narrator. She was taking control of the situation, moving it to a space of her own choosing. Amara led the way, opening the back door into a small, tidy yard. Narrator. They walked past a line of drying laundry, through a gap in a low fence. They were now in the lane behind the house. Narrator. And there it was, the low, crumbling wall dappled in the shade of the mango tree. Narrator. It was waiting for them, their old sanctuary. Narrator. The walk was silent, the sounds of the town were more muted here. Narrator. This was their space, haunted by the ghosts of 1,000 shared sunsets. Narrator. As they approached the wall, Leo felt a profound sense of homecoming. This small structure was the true heart of his past. Narrator. Amara sat down first, in the exact spot she had always occupied. Narrator. She smoothed her dress over her knees. She looked up at him, her expression a clear invitation. Narrator. Leo hesitated. Then he understood. He sat down beside her, ignoring the dust that immediately clung to his clothes. Narrator. Section 10. Two worlds collide. They sat in silence on the wall, a heavy, charged silence. Narrator. Leo looked at his own hands. They were clean, the nails manicured. He remembered how they used to be. Narrator. He glanced at Amara. She was looking out at the familiar view, but her posture was not relaxed. She was poised, waiting. Narrator. Two different worlds were sitting side by side on a single stone wall.
Leo. The city, it's not like our town. It's a fight every day. To survive, you have to...
Narrator. He trailed off. Her expression remained unchanged. She was not interested in the mythology of his success.
Amara, you did what you said you would do. You went away and you came back rich.
Narrator. He had spent 7 years climbing a mountain. She had been walking a different, parallel path all along.
Amara, was it worth it?
Leo, I have a business. I have employees, people who can feed their families because of the work I provide. I built it from nothing. Someone endens unakadadori.
Amara, I read your letters, Leo. Amara. I also read what you did not write. The boy I knew was kind. He was proud, but he was gentle. Are you still that person?
Leo. No. I am not the same person. That boy, he would not have survived. Leo. The city is a machine, Amara. It grinds you down. I had to become hard. There were times I did things I am not proud of.
Narrator. Amara did not flinch or look away. She listened, her entire being focused on him.
Leo. I thought if I came back with enough money, it would make everything right. I thought the money was the answer. But sitting here now, I see it's just money. It can't buy back the years. It can't make you look at me the way you used to.
Amara reached out, her hand gently covering his. It was the same gesture she had made the night he first made his promise. Leo, she said softly, I never saw a boy with an empty bowl. I saw a lonely boy who was hungry. I never looked at you with pity. I looked at you with affection. Your promise, she continued. It was a beautiful, heartfelt thing from a proud boy. But it was a child's promise, Leo. You built your entire life on it. You went to war for it. I never wanted you to go to war. I just wanted you to be happy.
He remembered their conversation under a starry sky. Do you remember when I talked about the house I would build, and you asked if it would have a garden? Amara smiled, a real gentle smile. Yes, with a bench to sit on in the evening. I spent all my time building the house, Amara. I filled it with gold. But I forgot to plant the garden. The garden was the most important part, wasn't it?
She nodded, eyes shining. He finally understood. He'd been chasing the wrong kind of wealth. The true treasure, connection, shared peace, the simple dream of a garden. The confession and the shared memory changed the atmosphere between them. The tension dissipated, replaced by a fragile, tentative intimacy. The man and the woman on the wall were gone. For a moment, they were just Leo and Amara again. Two people with a shared history, trying to find a shared future. The weight of the original promise, The promise of marriage born from a boy's shame dissolved in the honesty of their conversation.
I don't want to marry you because I promised to, Leo said, the words coming from a new place of clarity. I don't want to repay you for your kindness, because when I was lost, you were my only light. Because even when I was alone in the city, the thought of you was my home. Because you see the person I am, not the money I have. And because I think I have loved you since the first day you shared your food with me.
Amara's heart swelled. This was the confession she had been waiting for. Not of his scars, but of his heart. This was not about a debt being paid. This was about love.
I am not the girl you left, Leo, she said softly, needing him to understand her own journey. I have my own dreams now. I am going to be a teacher. I am going to build a life here, in this town. He nodded, his eyes showing that he understood. I know, he said. And I don't want to take you away from that. I want to be a part of it. What if we built a new dream? Together.
Amara did not answer right away. She looked at the man beside her. Beautiful, broken, brilliant, who had journeyed through fire and come back to her. She believed him. She believed in his new promise, born not of shame, but of love and self-awareness. A life woven from his drive and her grace, his worldly knowledge and her deep wisdom. She stood up from the wall. For a heart-stopping moment, Leo thought she might walk away. His future hung in the balance, resting on her next move.
She brushed dust from her dress and looked down, a small, enigmatic smile on her lips. It is getting late, she said. My mother will be worried. We should go back to the house. Not a yes, not a no, an invitation to continue the conversation.
He reached up and took her offered hand, her grip firm and warm. As he stood, the last of the rich man's armor fell away. Not the boy with the empty bowl, not the king of the city, just Leo, a man who had come home, and Amara, wise enough to wait not for a promise, but for a man to find his way back to himself. Together they turned from the wall and walked toward the blue house. The setting sun cast their two long shadows as one on the dusty ground before them. Section 2. The Echo of a Promise. Later, as the three of them sat down to eat, the meal itself became a quiet resolution. The food was simple, the same kind of stew and yams that Amara had brought to him all those years ago. But this time, he was not sitting alone on a cold wall, eating from a plate on his lap. He was sitting at a table, a guest in a warm home, part of a small circle of family. He held the bowl out to her, a gesture that mirrored her first act of kindness all those years ago. It was not a payment or a repayment. It was a symbol of the journey from emptiness to abundance, from shame to gratitude, from taking to sharing. He had left to find his fortune, and had returned to find that his fortune was, and always had been, her. And the bowl between them, once a symbol of all he lacked, was finally blessedly full.